and fade it out so it doesn't just click off at the end. Suppose you had a stereo setup in your own studio, but you wanted to export a recording for playback in a studio where they have 5.1 surround. First, you would have to trick Kima into thinking that you have a 5.1 surround setup by editing the preferences. In the preferences, go to Speaker Placement and select Surround 5.1. Save the change. Then when you go to record, check the boxes for 6 output channels. Each of the 6 virtual outputs will be recorded into a separate file on the disk. For split surround format, you can name them with .l, .r, etc. Some timelines are both timeless and non-linear. When the yellow time cursor reaches a wait until, it stops time until the resume condition occurs. This one resumes when a MIDI key down is received. Same for this one. And this last one resumes when a middle C is detected in the audio input. So let's start it, and you can see that the yellow cursor stopped at the first wait until. And it's going to wait there until I send it a key down. Now it's processing the input until the next key down. Everything I say is being processed. When I'm finished with that, I can press another key down, and then it will fade away on the processing and fade in. This part will continue until I can sing a middle C into the microphone. The timeline is a schedule for when different algorithms should start and stop on the sound processor. That's why you can still hear sound coming out even when the time cursor has stopped. In this timeline, the order of the sounds doesn't even matter. It was set up so you could play any of the sounds at any time and for any duration. You can click in the time ruler to jump to a sound, or you can put in a marker and associate a MIDI program change with that marker. The cursor will jump to the marker whenever you send that MIDI program change number. Here's where you can set the MIDI channel for receiving program changes. The timeline can be set up to receive program changes on a different channel from the virtual control surface, so you can still use program changes to select presets. Here's a TC electronic foot switch that I'm going to use to send the MIDI program changes. What if you don't have anything that can send out MIDI program changes? You can use a triggered sound to global controller to translate a continuous controller into a program change. Let's drag it into the timeline, make it overlap with all of the other sounds, then double-click it to edit the parameters. Let's set the trigger to gate so we can control when the program change is sent. It doesn't really matter what we call the value fader. Let's call it marker to correspond with the marker numbers in the timeline. The generated event should be exclamation point program number, so it will send out MIDI program changes. Right now this track is set to MIDI channel 3. We can either change it to send on channel 1, or we can leave it on channel 3 and change the timeline to receive program changes on channel 3. Unlock the VCS to change the range of the marker fader. Double-click the marker fader. Change its minimum to 1, maximum to 4, and change the grid so the step size is 1. Now we can use the marker fader to select a marker and press the gate button to send the program change. Now that we're using sound to global controllers, we could even generate the program changes algorithmically. Once per second, this expression generates a random number between -1 and 1, takes the absolute value, multiplies by 4, and rounds it so the result is an integer. Then it sends it as a MIDI program change number. Anytime the cursor reaches one of these teleporting expressions, a random program change number is generated, causing the cursor to jump to a random marker in the timeline. If the program number is 0, the cursor continues playing straight through. The expression at the very end always generates program number 1, causing it to loop back to the beginning. So here is a self-playing timeline.